Hello everyone and welcome to Colors Fade Gaming. I'm your host, Colors Fade. CD Projekt Red announced that they're releasing a new DLC for Cyberpunk 2077, titled Phantom Liberty. The DLC will bring back Keanu Reeves as Johnny Silverhand and is being billed as a spy thriller expansion set in a brand new district of Night City. In addition to the DLC, CD Projekt Red has also released the 1.6 Edge Runner update, which has some tie-ins to the Netflix anime series of the same name. The update has some really cool features that I'll talk about later in this video. I, for one, cannot wait to get my hands on all of this. Now, you might be wondering, why should I care? Wasn't Cyberpunk a horrible game? Didn't it have an awful release on consoles? Wasn't it so riddled with bugs that it was pulled from the PlayStation Store? Yes, some of that is true. But the thing is, that wasn't my experience with the game. I was one of the lucky ones. I played it on PC, and on my machine it played beautifully. In fact, I only ever witnessed a couple of bugs in the many hundreds of hours I put into the game. And yes, I did really sink that much time into it. Cyberpunk is the only game I have ever played where I actually took the time to get all the endings and unlock every single Steam achievement. For me, that's saying something. When it came to the bugs, the most prominent one I experienced was when traffic inexplicably stopped on the highways. That was really the only bug I ever encountered in repeat fashion. I did see a couple of NPCs T-pose one time, and I did have a car get stuck hovering over a sidewalk one other time. But in the hundreds of hours I played, those were the extent of my issues. I have heard all of the complaints about the game. I've heard people say it's shallow. I've heard people complain that there's not much to do. I've even seen tweets from William Gibson, one of the godfathers of the cyberpunk genre himself, taking shots at the game. I'm not here to counter any of those arguments. I think they all have some merit. But the thing is, to me, none of that really matters. You see, for me, this all starts 40 years ago when Blade Runner came out in 1982. I was 10 years old at the time, and suffice to say, I was blown away by what I saw. My developing brain could not understand how to process all of that awesomeness on the screen. Blade Runner instantly became one of my favorite films, and nothing has ever knocked it from its perch. I still adore it. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the characters. I love the world. I love everything Ridley Scott did to create it. It wasn't a world I wanted to live in, to be sure. It's a bit cold, crowded, and wet, but it was a world I wanted to visit, and I think that's a hallmark of great fiction, is when you see a world that you want to visit. When I walked out into Night City for the first time with the power of my PC and a 1080 Ti graphics card, I finally got to realize that moment. I still remember the hair standing up on my arms and the feeling of awe as my character simply walked around. I remember the pure joy I felt at barreling down the highway in the Rayfield Caliburn, and the adrenaline rush of taking on a mechanized human going berserk. I remember smiling with glee as I fried enemies through remote cyber implants. Most of all, I remember the characters, the small personal moments when Cyberpunk is telling its story. It is true that it isn't the best possible game it could be. It is a bit thin. It is linear. It doesn't have the deep moral choices of something like Fallout New Vegas. It doesn't have the meaningful character growth of something like Disco Elysium. It doesn't take full advantage of its open world, like Elden Ring. It borrows heavily from Grand Theft Auto and yet doesn't do nearly anything as well as Grand Theft Auto does. But I still love it. One of the things I've learned over the past few years is that nothing is perfect. So the question you have to answer is there enough good stuff for you to fall in love? Elden Ring, as an example, is an amazing game. Yet it too is not perfect. When I played it, I griped about the awful UI experience and the intentionally obscure narrative design. But in the end, it's still so incredibly fun and captivating that those negatives didn't detract me from enjoying the overall game. And that's kind of the secret to gaming, I think. No game is ever going to be perfect. Yes, I'd love to see the next Cyberpunk game really go the extra mile. I'd love to see something with meaningful character choices and deep immersive systems. I'd love to see something with more going for it than just shooting nameless NPCs and collecting loot. Because there is so much more you could do with a world like this. But I'm also not unhappy about Cyberpunk. And I'm definitely not mad about it like some other people are. It is what it is. It's a narrative action adventure game. It's an immersive movie experience. It's a game centered on narrative storytelling and combat. It's a wonderfully voice acted, visually stunning, and adequately satisfying game. Mostly, though, it just scratches that itch. The one I've had since I first saw Harrison Ford and Sean Young grace the screen together some 40 years ago. Anyway, I can't wait to play the DLC, but before it arrives, I still want to talk about the 1.6 update that just came out because it has some new features that are pretty cool. First up, and this is my favorite change, you can now wear whatever clothes you like without affecting your stats. This is fantastic, and it's basically the way every game should operate, especially since developers have a penchant for putting the best stats on the worst looking items. I don't know why this is, but this has been going on since I was playing EverQuest. Developers always put the best stats on the worst looking gear. It's a curse, and this is why we need more games to have a feature like this where what you wear cosmetically does not affect your stats. So thank you, CD Projekt Red, for that one. Also, now you can preview clothes before you buy them. So shoppers, rejoice. Ripper docs can now change your appearance with all the power of the character creation screen. So this is very cool, especially for people who want to change their character appearance without having to roll a whole new character. Cross progression is now available between platforms thanks to cloud saves. So if you're one of those folks with multiple devices, rejoice. Finally, Red Mod is launching a set of tools to help people mod the game, and this is huge. We all know from games like Skyrim and Fallout 4 that these sorts of games can have a very long shelf life with an active modding community. But to make that work, modding the game needs to be easy. Releasing a mod kit is going to go a long way toward making that a reality for Cyberpunk 2077. So there you have it. Cyberpunk 2077 is getting a bunch of new features via a patch, and a new DLC is on the horizon. Keanu Reeves is coming back as Johnny Silverhand, and I, for one, am ecstatic. I enjoyed the heck out of this game when it was launched, and I've been looking for a reason to revisit it ever since. So it seems like that time is almost here. I do want to say one final thing to those of you who never bought the game, probably because you read about all the horrible stories that happened at launch and saw all the horrible graphics on the old PlayStations. If you're on a console, certainly I understand skipping this title. But if you're on a newer generation console, CD Projekt Red has made a number of enhancements to the game to bring it up to par, bring it up where it should be graphically. So if you have a newer generation console, you should certainly consider giving the game a try. And if you are on PC like I am, I definitely think you should consider playing it. I've had a huge amount of fun with this game. I think narratively it's a lot of fun for what it is as a narratively driven action adventure game. I think it's pretty fantastic. Yes, it's linear in nature even though there's an open world. The open world is basically just about how you get to handle side quests, but narratively it's a pretty linear story. And it's mostly a combat-oriented game. I know people were expecting more, and that's really all it is. It's a combat-oriented game. But it still adds up to a lot of fun. Of the people that I remember talking to at launch, and there were a lot of them, it was a very polarizing game. People were either hated it, and a lot of them hated it because of all the bugs on the older consoles, so they were mad that they couldn't play it. Or they were like me, playing on a PC or a newer gen console, and they loved it. I have one friend who played it on a newer Xbox. I have another friend who played it on one of the latest PlayStations. And they were like, yeah, every now and then I experience a bug, but I'm having too much fun not to play it. They loved it. So I think that's the thing. You have to understand it's not a perfect game, but it can be a blast. So if you've been on the fence at all and you're thinking, I might want to pick that up on sale or something, with the new DLC coming out and with the new patch having just come out, I think you should strongly consider it. If you have an inkling at all that you might enjoy this game, I think you probably would. Don't let the launch detract you from going out and giving this a try, especially if you can pick it up on sale. Alright everyone, that's all I have for this video. As always, if you dig it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave questions and comments down below. I am your host, Colors Fade. I will see you next time. Everyone, happy gaming.